Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So last lesson, just to recap, we talked about the idea of if a person has their zakat anniversary and they have to give zakat. So let's say I have £1,000 and I have to give zakat of £25, and what I do is without making the intention of zakat, I gave all my money away to charity. All £1,000 I gave it away to charity. So qiyasan, this should not be counted as zakat. Why? Because we said zakat is an ibadah. Ibadahs require an intention for Allah's sake, and there's no intention over here for Allah's sake because it wasn't counted as being for zakat, so therefore it should not be counted as zakat. However, we said istihsanan, and we said istihsan is basically where the qiyas, the theory, is broken with a stronger dalil. Yeah, so it's overpowered with a stronger dalil. And we said over here, the istihsan over here is what? Is that the £1,000 that I had to give in charity, I only had to give £25 from that. So when I gave the full £1,000, that means there was no other competing intention involved. Yeah, so there was no other competing intention. When there is no other competing intention, then what happens is there's no need, the argument is that there's no need to make a specific intention for zakat, because zakat will be already subsumed, will already be included into that 1,000. Yeah, فَلَا حَاجَةَ إِلَى التَّعْيِينِ. That's why he's saying that ta'yin of niyyah is not required over here. And if you remember last lesson, I went into a bit of detail about this concept of making an intention, where you have an ibadah, which that ibadah, you can have multiple intentions for why you do that. So, like salat, for instance, we said a person can pray nafal if they want, they can pray fard if they want, they can pray qadha if they want. So therefore, because there's so many possibilities of what you can do, the Hanafis say, in order for a fard to be valid, you have to make the intention of fard, because there's competing actions and competing intentions. And this is why, like, also, I mean, it would be much easier for you guys to understand if you did my usul fiqh, 28 lessons of usul fiqh. In there, I explained this whole concept of niyyah, and when you can have an ibadah which has no other competing possibilities for it. Yeah. Okay. Then the last masala of this chapter, he says, وَلَوْ أَدَّى بَعْضَ النِّصَابِ سَقَطَ زَكَاةُ الْمُؤَدَّى عِنْدَ Muhammad. So here's the next question. The first scenario was if you were to give all £1,000. So I was supposed to give from that £1,000 £25 for zakat, yeah? So I gave all £1,000. So we said, istihsanan, it's done. Zakat has dropped. The obligation has dropped. سَقَطَ فَرْضُهَا. But what if I only gave £100? So out of the £1,000, I gave £100 to charity without the intention of zakat. Do I still have to give the £25? Does everyone understand? So this is the £1,000. I've given £100 to charity without making any intention of zakat. Will that my zakat be counted in that 100 or not? So according to Imam Muhammad says that that percentage of how much you've given will be deducted from the percentage of zakat. So in other words, how much is £100 from £1,000? It's 10%. So therefore, if I give £100 from £1,000 to charity, that means that 10% I've given, and therefore I can deduct that from 10% of £25 of the zakat money I'm supposed to give. So what's 10% of 25? £2.50. Yeah, that's 10% of 25. So 25 minus £2.50 now. Imam Muhammad says you only have to give £22.50. Yeah, £2.50 has been minus deducted. Everyone understand this, or shall I say again? Have you understand the concept that if you were to give a portion of your wealth without making intention of zakat, will the zakat be counted? Imam Muhammad says the amount of you've given from the whole total, that percentage will also drop and deducted from the £25 of zakat that you owe. Yeah? And if I was to give £500, then obviously from £25, half of that would go, because 500 is half 1,000. So therefore, instead of me having to give £25 of zakat, I only have to give £12.5 of zakat. Yeah, makes sense? Does that understand, or shall I say again? Yeah. So he says, in the Muhammad, what's the reasoning for this? What's the rationale for this? The rationale, he says, is because he says, remember when we said 1,000, when you gave 1,000, yeah, the whole 1,000, that 25 that you owed of zakat was part of the 1,000. How many 25s are there in 1,000? We said there's 40 25s in 1,000. So if you've given all your £1,000 that you have, your life savings, you've given all of that away. That means you've given 40 25. So therefore, one of those 40 25s can be assumed as your zakat. Now, if you were to not to give the 1,000, but you gave a fraction of the 1,000, a percentage of the 1,000, you gave half of the 1,000, or you gave 10% of the 1,000, will that have an effect on how much zakat you have to give? So Imam Muhammad says, yes, it does. Why? لأن الواجب شائع في الكل. Because the obligation, if my 1 year has passed and I have £1,000, yeah, how much of the zakat do I owe? So I owe £25, yeah. So that portion of £25 is the wajib, is the obligation. So Imam Muhammad saying. So if I give from my £1,000, if I give half of it, that means that should also have an effect on the wajib. So the amount that I have to give, for example, is £25. So if I've given half of my entire wealth, that means that half of that 25 should also have gone as well. Yeah, so this is why it says لأن الواجب, because the obligation شائع, it means it's spread, fil kul, in all. Yeah, like the way to understand this is, does everyone understand this idea of, let's say for instance, like I have a house, and let's say for example Khalidas owns 10% of my house. When we say Khalida owns 10% of my house, what does that mean? Does that mean like from this wall to this wall to this wall to this wall, that's the part she owns? No. Yeah, because that's called a juz. In Arabic, you call that a portion, like a physical portion. We're talking about a percentage. So when I say Khalida owns 10% of my house, what that means is 10% of every brick, 10% of every flooring, 10% of every ceiling, 10% of all the walls, she owns. Yeah? So you can put your finger on any part of the house and say 10% of this she owns. That's called shai'. That's called spread. So what Imam Muhammad is saying is that the £25 that I owe of zakat is actually spread throughout the 1,000. Every pound in the 1,000, I owe 2.5% of it. So in that 1,000, if you were to spread all the 1,000 out in front of us on the table, every single pound in the 1,000, every single pound, I owe 2.5% of it. Yeah, 2.5% of this, 2.5%. So that's why he's saying that if half of that wealth goes, that means the 2.5% in every single one of those pounds, right, has also gone as well. Yeah, does everyone understand this? Or should I say it again? Yes, no? Yeah? Okay. I think you guys understood. Right, in the Abu Yusuf, this is Imam Muhammad's argument. Imam Muhammad's argument is basically looking at the concept of percentage. Like when we say I owe £25 of 1,000, then what does that mean? I owe 25 of 1,000. He's saying you owe 2.5% of the entire 1,000, which is 2.5% of every pound in the £1,000. Imam Abu Yusuf, he doesn't say that. Imam Abu Yusuf says لا تسقط. Yeah. He says, because look, when the £1,000, I had the £1,000, I owed £25. Now the qiyas was that I owe £25 irrespective of what happens to the wealth. Yeah. So therefore, as long as all the wealth has not gone in charity, I still owe £25. So if I gave £100 in charity, I still owe £25. And if I gave £500 in charity, I still owe £25 of zakat. And if I gave £900 in charity, I still owe £25 of zakat, because that hasn't gone. So he says, لا تسقط, the £25 you initially owed does not drop. لأن البعض غير متعين, because the portion is non-specified. His argument is, when you say you owe £25 from 1,000, that's non-specified. Like if I gave £500 in charity, that 25 can be counted from the other half. Yeah, that 25 can be counted from the other half. So Imam Muhammad is looking at the argument that every pound in the 1,000, you owe 2.5% of it. Whereas Imam Abu Yusuf is saying you owe 25 pounds of the entire 1,000. So if half of it you're given in charity, there's still, 20 25s left in the rest of it. Does everyone understand? Yeah. So he says, لأن البعض غير متعين, because the portion, i.e. the 25 pounds, is non-specified in where is it located. Like you can't get like a magnifying glass and look in and find in that 1,000 where is that 25. لكون الباقي, because the remainder. So if I gave £500 from the £1,000 to charity, and I've got £500 left, the baqi, the remaining £500, mahallan, is a location lilwajib, for the obligation, i.e. for the £25. Yeah. So let's look at it rationally now. If I have £1,000 and I gave all of it away to charity, there's no mahal left. There's no place left for £25. So that's why it makes sense that we follow the istihsan rule and say, okay, there's, zakat has been given because there's nothing left. But if I was to give £1 from £1,000, is it possible that £25 is still left in the remainder? £999. We say yes. Yeah. How many 25s are left? Well, there's 39 25s left. Okay, let's say I gave £100. I'm giving £100 from the 1,000 to charity without the intention of zakat. How many 25s are left in the remainder? Yeah, so we say they are, 90% of the 25s are left. Yeah, how much is that? That's -4, that's 36. 36 25s are left. 36 25s are left. Okay, imagine I gave half of my wealth in charity. So I've got £500 left now. How many 25s are left in 500? So we say 20. Imagine I gave £900. How many 25s are left? 4 25s are left. Imagine I gave £999. How many 25s are left? None. Only £1 left. Yeah. So according to Imam Abu Yusuf, he would say, if you've only got £1 left, that's not mahal of the wajib, because the wajib was 25. 1 is not 25. So therefore, that can't be zakat. But according to Imam Muhammad, you could still have zakat, because he says your zakat is in every pound, 2.5% of every single pound. Does everyone understand the argument now? Am I making it clear? Yeah, because if you guys are not responding to me, I can't tell if you've understood it or not understood it. So I'm just going to take it as though you've understood it. Yeah? Okay, understood. Mahallan lil wajib bi khilaf al awwal, as opposed to the first. As opposed to the first is meaning that if I was to give all of my money away, there's no mahal left. Okay? So now, what do we learn from this? We learn how Imam Muhammad looks at the concept of zakat and how Abu Yusuf looks at the concept of zakat. Imam Muhammad is looking at the concept of zakat as being an obligation in every single pound that you have. Every single pound that you have, there's an obligation in there. Whereas Imam Abu Yusuf is saying no. He's saying the obligation is in the amount that's necessary on you in the 1,000. So £25 is necessary. So long as you still have £25 left in that money that you have, then you still have to give that £25. And once you don't have £25 left, then you assume your zakat has been given. Yeah. Okay, so wallahu a'lam bis-sawab. Right, next. Now it's the next topic is what we call sadaqatus sawaim. Sadaqatus sawaim is basically camel's zakat. So let me explain some things about camels to you guys. All right. Now, ideally, I should have put my Quduri lesson of camels. I don't know if do you guys know the calculation of camels, how to work out camels? If I say to you, if you've got 976 camels, how much zakat do you give? Do you guys know that? How to work it out? Yeah, that's something which I've explained in my Quduri. Yeah, and you should be able to. If I give you any number, you should be able to straight away work out how much zakat is needed. Yeah. So camel's zakat is one of the types of nisabs. Okay, so there's 8 nisabs or 7 or 8 nisabs, and camels is one of them. So the word ibil, let me explain some words to you guys first of all, before we actually start. Ibil is what we call ism jins, okay? So animals have a real name and a classification name. The classification name, like, you have, in biology where you learn about the Latin name of this, yeah? So humans, yeah, have like a classification name, and then they have their own name. And likewise, animals, so ibil is the classification name. It's called the ism jins. It's like it belongs to this particular family, the ibil family. And then, jamal is actually the name of the camel. Yeah, naqa is the name of the camel. So ibil, they call it an ibil. Camels are called ibils because it's from the word bowl. And the way they urinate on their thighs. So if you ever seen a camel urinate, it opens its legs up, right? Spreads its legs, and then it urinates, and then that urine splashes on its thighs. Yeah. So some of the linguists have said this word has come from the name for this. Yeah. Wallahu alam. Now, Arabs, when they have camels were considered to be the most expensive asset that you had in the olden days. Like nowadays, it's houses now. So if a person owns a house, that's probably the most expensive asset that they've got. In the olden days, house wasn't that expensive. Your camel was really expensive. It was the prized possession that you had. Yeah. So this is why camels were valued a lot. So camels, obviously, were kept for different reasons. Remember we said zakat is only necessary upon mal nami, productive wealth. So that's why zakat is only necessary on camels that are self-grazing. Self-grazing camels basically means, according to Hanafis, a camel which is taken out by the shepherd, yeah, the camel herder. He takes the camels out and they graze in the wilderness. Yeah, so they eat from the wilderness. This is known as, you call this soam with a sin waw mim. Sin waw mim, soam, okay? So a camel that eats in the wilderness, so let's say you've got camels, 50 camels, you take them outside to the park or some open area and they eat over there. That's called a self-grazing camel. So self-grazing female camels. So it has to be self-grazing, number one. If it's non-self-grazing, if you feed it, like you buy food for it, fodder, and you feed the camels, then those camels, there's no zakat in there. All right? So it has to be self-grazing, number one. And self-grazing for at least 6 months of the year. Yeah, so it has to self-graze for at least 6 months. As long as it's been self-grazing for 6 months of the year, then it's zakatable. And so they have to also be adults as well. So the camels have to be adults, not baby camels, right? So if there's baby camels, there's no zakat in them unless they're accompanied with adults. All right, so that's going to come later on as well. Now, that's the important thing you need to understand. Next, camels are of different ages. Okay, there's different ages of camels. So you have a 1-year-old camel, means a camel that has gone into its second year now. Yeah. So basically, when we say 1-year-old, the Arabs actually say it's 2 years old, meaning it's gone into its second year, right? So I'm going to say this: it's gone into its second year now. So instead of saying 1-year-old, I'm going to say it's gone into second year. So if it's gone into its second year, so let's say this is a she camel. This she camel has given birth. When a she camel is pregnant for about 9 months of the year, 10 months of the year, you say 10 months. So this 10-month she camel, she gives birth. So once she gives birth, what happens is after 1 year, she now becomes pregnant again. Yeah. So because obviously a male will mate with her and then she become pregnant. So this is why this baby camel that was born 1 year ago is called a ibn makhad or bint makhad. Yeah. Ibn makhad, bint makhad. Yeah. Everyone understand that? Yeah. So this is called ibn makhad. Meaning makhad means like labor pains. Meaning the mother, once the child is 1 year old, i.e. gone into second year, it means now its mother is now ready to give birth again. Yeah, it's usually the time she gives birth. She might not be pregnant, but she usually is pregnant and giving birth. When that baby becomes a 2-year-old, i.e. into its third year, yeah, it's in its third year now. Now that baby is now called a ibn labun or bint labun. Ibn labun or bint labun basically means the mother is at a stage now where she's given birth and now she's filled with milk that she can feed that baby that was born in year 2. She can feed it now. Okay, so the babies that were born before are now called the children of milk, like Ibn Labun, Bint Labun. Everyone understand that? This is the 2-year-old camel, or we call it into its third year. The 3-year-old camel, right? This is the next one now. Yeah. So you got 1-year-old camel, 2-year-old camel. So Binti Makhaz, Binti Labun, and then you got the third one. The third one is called a Hiqqa. Hiqqa, yeah, Hiqqa is now basically, it's like at an age where you can ride on that camel now. So it's haqq, like there's like right to ride on it. Before that, it was too young to ride on. So this is like a 3-year-old, i.e. it's in its 4th year. Call it hiqqa. Then when it becomes like an adult, when it's gone into its 5th year, it's a 4-year-old. You call it a jad'a. A jad'a. Okay, so jad'a. And then after that, then it becomes like a 5-year-old. It's gone its 6th year. You call this a thani. A thani. Yeah. And then when it goes into its 7th year and it's 6 years old, you call it a sudais, yeah, or a sudais. So those are the names of the camels you need to know, right? Those are the names of the camels. Now, when it comes to zakat, right, we're only interested in the first 4 ages of camels, because once they go past into the 5th year, once they go into the 6th year and 7th year, so once they are 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, they're gone too old now, right? So now, they've reached like their peak in their age, and now they start to deteriorate. It's like old age. So once you reach over the age of 40 or 50, that's it now. Your body starts to deteriorate. So that's like their deterioration. So the fiqh doesn't deal with the 5-year-old camel, the 6-year-old camel. Doesn't deal with that. So we're only interested in the first 4. Everyone understand the first 4? Ibn or Binti Makhaz, Ibn Binti Labun, Hiqqa, Jiz'a. Okay? Now, so when it comes to the chapters of fiqh, camels are discussed in about 5 areas, 5 or 6 areas. Yeah, so they're discussed in zakat. They're discussed in when it comes to hajj. Yeah, so in other words, in hajj, when you slaughter an animal, or jinayat in hajj, when you kill an animal that's a large animal, you sacrifice a camel or whatever. And they're also discussed in when it comes to blood money as well. So qatl, so when you kill someone and you give blood money, so you give it in camels. Yeah, so 100 camels you give, and then you give Ibn Makhad, you give Ibn Labuns, etc. Those. And it's also discussed in the chapter of Udhi as well, slaughtering animals in Eid. Yeah, Eid slaughtering. Okay, so these are the normal 5 or 6 areas in fiqh, you're gonna find the discussion of camels. But the main 2 is obviously zakat and udhiyah, qurbani. In qurbani, you are not allowed to slaughter any camel that's under 5 years old. Yeah, you're not allowed to. You have to slaughter a thani, right, which is a 5-year-old camel. So over there, the slaughtering of camels has to be a 5-year-old camel. And in here, we're not interested in 5-year-old camels, because zakat is more to do with, like we said, to do with the idea of these young camels, because they're more productive. Okay, so that's cleared up now. Now we've understood that. So this is now the calculation, okay? So this is the calculation of how we work out the zakat. So it's like this. So I'm not going to write it on the board or anything. I'll just say it to you guys. So the numbers that you have to learn is this 5. So you can do it on your hands here. You have 9 fingers on your hands. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Then 36, 46, 60, and 76. Yeah. 46, 60, and 76. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right, so look, this is how it works. If you have 5 camels, yeah, you have to give 1 goat as the zakat. If you have 10 camels, you have to give 2 goats. If you have 15 camels, you have to give 3 goats. If you have 20 camels, you have to give 4 goats. If you have up to 25 camels, yeah. So 4, 5 is 1, 10 is 2, 15 is 3, 20 is 4, and then 25, it's binti makhad. Yeah, so once it reaches 25, now you give binti makhad all the way up to 36, not including 36. From 36, you give a binti labun. Yeah, so binti labun is given. Everyone understand up to here? Yeah, so if someone has 29 camels, what do they give? Someone has 29 camels, what do they give? Anyone know?
Binti Makhad.
Yeah, binti makhad. Okay, binti makhad they give. Because the range is from 25 to 35, just before 36. But if they have 36 camels, now they have to give binti labun, all the way up to 46. So just below 46, 45. So that range there. Okay, from 46, once the camels reach 46, then they have to give a hiqqah. Yeah, so 46 is a hiqqah. Like I told you, hiqqah is the one where now you can ride on it. Yeah, which is a 4-year-old. Yeah, 3-year-old gone into its 4th year now. Yeah, and that's from 46 all the way up to 60. Once it hits 60, then it's a jad'a, a full adult. Yeah, you give jad'a. So the jad'a is from 46 all the way up to 60. Okay, this is a jad'a. And the jad'a, like we said, is a 4-year-old going to the 5th year. Yeah, so that we call it a 4-year-old. So let me say that all again now. So once you've understood up to here, then this is the most important part. The rest of it then is easy. So if you have 5 camels, how much do you give? 1 goat. 10 camels, 2 goats. 15 camels, 3 goats. 20 camels, 4 goats. 25 camels, then you give bint makhad. Remember, it's a bint, not ibn. And 36 camels, you give bint labun. 46 camels, then you give hiqqah. Then 60 camels, then you give jaz'a. All the way up to, like we said, 76. Yeah, all the way up to 76. Once it hits 76, now we're going to give 2 bint labuns. Yeah, so 2 bint labuns. Okay, so from 76 all the way up to 90, 2 bint labuns. And then from 90 all the way up to 120, just before 120, up to 120, you give 2 hiqqas. Okay, this whole calculation, 46 to 60 is a hiqqa, 60 to 76 is a jad'a, 76 to 90 is 2 bint labuns, and then 90 to 120 is 2 hiqqas. This is something all madhabs agree on. Everyone agrees on this up to 120. Have you got that? Does everyone understand this calculation? Okay, once you've understood this, yeah. Now after this, after 120, you start the calculation again now. So just bank that 120. So 120 is equal to 2 hiqqas. Yeah, 2 3-year-old camels. Yeah, 2 3-year-old camels. So you put that to one side. Now you start the calculation again now. So if you have 5 camels, so you got 120, put them to a side. Now on top of that, if you got 5 camels, you give 1 goat. You got 10 camels, you give 2 goats. You got 15 camels, you give 3 goats. You got 20 camels, you give 4 goats. And then you've got 25, then you give bint makhaz, right? All the way up to 50, yeah? Or sorry, 150. So in other words, remember, we're starting from 120. So between 120 and between 150, there's only 30 numbers there. So when you have 5, i.e. 125, you give 1 goat. When you have 5 more, meaning 130, you give 2 goats. When you have 135, then you give 3 goats. When you have 140, you give 4 goats. And then when you have 25, then you give bint makhad. So basically it's going to be 146. Yeah, 145 all the way up to 150. Yeah. So that is now the calculation. And then what you do is, once you hit that calculation, then from every 50 to every 100, you're going to do that same cycle again. So 5, 1 goat. 10, 2 goats. 15, 3 goats. 20, 4 goats. 25 to 36 to up to 36, binti makhad. And then 36 up to 50 is going to be binti labun. Yeah. Once you hit 60, then you give a hiqqah. So you're going to, at every 50, you're going to give a hiqqah. Does everyone understand that? Now, I've basically explained all of this with images, with drawings, in my Quduri videos. If you watch my Quduri videos, it's going to be easy to understand. Very, very easy to understand. Yeah? So not 120, not 125, 120. Yeah? So 120 is 2 hiqqahs plus 5 on top. 2 hiqqahs plus 1 goat. Now let me quiz those of you guys who know this very well. What if you had 512 camels? 512 camels. How do you work it out? So first of all, what you do is, how many 50s fully go into 512? How many 50s go fully into, because every 50 is equal to 1 hiqqah. Yeah, every 50. So how many 50s go into 512? Come on, you guys should 10. Okay, so you got 10 there. That means 10 hiqqahs. And then now calculate, if you have 12 camels on top of that, what do you give? If you have 12 camels, what do you give? Yeah, 2 goats, that's it. So now you can use the same number. If I said, if you have 574 camels, how much zakat do you give? So how many 50 is going to 575? So 74. Yeah, so 11, yeah? So 11. So 50, 550, 11 50s. And then on top of that, 550, how much you got left? So you've got 24 left. Yeah, so 24 is 4 goats. Yeah. And the same thing goes if I said to you 927. 927. How many 50s go into 927? Yeah, how many 50s go into 927? Yeah. Come on, it's easy. How many 50s go into 927? 18. And then, so that's 900. So then 27 on top of that. What do you have to give if you got 27 goats, camels? 27, come on. Should be easy. Bint makhad, khalas. You've understood now. That's the calculation of how the Hanafis say. This is how the Hanafis do it. The Shafis, this is where the Shafis differ with us now. The Shafis say that once you hit 120, after that, you only shift in 40s and 50s after that. And every time you get a 50, you give a hiqqah. And every time you get a 40, you give binti makhad, binti labun. So basically, according to Shafis, you don't give like 125. You don't give 2 hiqqahs and 1 goat. You don't do that. Yeah. You only give the next calculation once you reach 40 or 50. Does everyone understand what I mean by that? So in other words, if you have 100 and, so if you have, 125 nothing, 130 nothing, 135 nothing, 140, yeah? Okay, there, you're going to give, you're going to give nothing as well. Yeah, there's nothing there. Because it's not 40 after 120. Yeah. Once you hit 150, then you're going to give 3 hiqqahs. Yeah, and then like that. So you're going to only add an extra one if it comes within 40 or 50 calculation numbers. Okay, that's the Shafi's method, that is. Right, so let's look at this text then. So he says, قال رضي الله عنه ليس في أقل من 5 ذود. There is not in less than 5 ذود. ذود means a jama'ah. So animals have like different names for groups. So a herd. There is no zakat, there's no sadaqah in anything less than 5 camels. فإذا بلغت 5 سائمة. Once it reaches 5 self-grazing female camels. وحال عليها الحول. And 1 year has gone by. So you've had it for 1 year. Because remember we said that was a condition. ففيها شاة. You give 1 shat. إلى 9. up to 9. Yeah. So in other words, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you only have to give 1. فإذا كانت عشرا, and when it becomes عشر, ففيها شاتان, then there's 2 goats you give. إلى أربع عشرة, until you reach 14. فإذا كانت خمس عشرة, when it reaches 15, ففيها ثلاث شياه, then you have to give 3 goats. إلى تسع عشرة, until you reach 19. فإذا كانت 20, when it reaches 20, ففيها أربع شياه, then you give 4 goats. إلى أربع وعشرين, until you reach 24. فإذا بلغت 25, once it reaches 25, ففيها بنت مخاض, then you have to give 1 بنت مخاض. What's a bint مخاض? هي التي طعنت, it's that which has pierced into its second year, في الثانية. Yeah, it's pierced in second year, meaning year 2. فإذا كانت 36, once it reaches 36, ففيها بنت لبون. You give 1. What's a بنت لبون? هي التي طعنت, and this is the one that has pierced into the third year. إلى 45, until you reach 45. فإذا كانت 46, and once it reaches 46, ففيها حقة, and then you have to give حقة. فإذا وهي, what's a حقة? التي طعنت, which has pierced into the 4th year, meaning it's 3 years old, pierced into year 4. إلى 60, until the number 60. فإذا كانت 61, once it reaches 61, then ففيها جذعة, then you have to give a جذعة. What's a جذعة? هي التي, that is the one which has pierced into the 5th year, i.e. 4-year-old. إلى 75, and this number is all the way from 61 all the way up to 75. فإذا كانت 76, and then once it hits 76, ففيها بنتا, then there is بنتا, 2 بنت لبونز. إلى 90, meaning you don't give حقة, there's 2 بنت لبونز. فإذا كانت 91, and once it reaches 91, ففيها حقتان, now you give 2 حقas. إلى 120, until you reach 120. Yeah. Now, why do we follow this calculation for? So he says, the reason we follow this calculation is بهذا اشتهرت كتب الصدقات من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Yeah. It's become very famous that the letters, the kutub here means letters, the letters of zakat that were written by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he didn't write it himself, but he got other people to write it. He specifically mentioned calculations in this. So this is what the Hanafis, this is from Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Yeah, so famous Abdullah bin Mas'ud narration where it's mentioned about the calculation, and these matters the Prophet ﷺ was very specific about. He gave people like written numbers, yeah, because it's from the umur of deen, and it's umur tawqifiyah according to majority of the Hanafis. They say it's from the umur tawqifiyah. That's why we don't know why a goat is given. Why a goat is given for 5 camels? How do we know that 1 goat is equal to 2.5% of 5 camels? Where do we get that from? So it's from umur tawqifiyah. It's those matters amr ta'abudi, our minds can't fathom it. It's beyond our understanding. Like, why do you pray 5 times salat? Why don't 6 or 4? Yeah. Why do we go around the Kaaba 7 times? It's the same thing. So he says these have been widespread in the days of Sahaba. People knew this. So the Hanafis say, look, we stick to this, the thing that was very famous. Yeah, we stick to that, and it was written down like from the Prophet ﷺ. On the other hand, the Shafi'is, they actually also take from a hadith. They take from a Sahih Bukhari hadith. So if you want to read more about this, then in Umdatul Ri'ayah, yeah, Maulana Abdul Hayy Laknawi has actually mentioned about this, and he says the Shafis take from the Bukhari narration about the after the 120. So everyone agrees up to here. Everyone agrees on up to 120. It's after 120 where the ikhtilaf starts. So the Shafis take the Bukhari narration where it's mentioned about you go between 40s and 50s after that. Yeah. And at the bottom here, he's actually mentioned a narration over here. Yeah, there's a narration for up to 120. This is the famous narration. Kitab, this was the letter of Abu Bakr to Anas, and the letter of Umar, and the letter of Amr ibn Hazm, and all of these Sahaba, the governors, they had these letters that they clearly had got from the Prophet ﷺ. They weren't making it up themselves. And the Rasulullah kataba kitab al-sadaqah, the Prophet ﷺ wrote the letter of sadaqah, فَلَمْ يُخْرِجْهُ إِلَىٰ عُمَّالِهِ حَتَّى قُبِضْ, and he didn't send it out to his governors until he passed away. فَقَرَنَهُ بِسَيْفِهِ, and so what happened was he put it into his sword. Yeah. فَلَمَّا فَلَمَّا قُبِّضَ this is Umar radiallahu anhu, he puts it into his sword sheath. It was like a kind of like a makeshift, sort of like a safekeep bag. And then when فَلَمَّا قُبِضَ عَمِلَ بِهِ Abu Bakr. So when the Prophet passed away, Abu Bakr acted upon it. حَتَّى قُبِضَ until he passed away. And then Umar acted upon it until he passed away. And then وَكَانَ فِيهِ خَمْسٌ مِنْ الْآن. And what was written in there? 5 camels, 1 goat. 10 camels, 2 goats. 15 camels, 3 goats. 20 camels, 4 goats. 25 camels, 1 bint makhadh. And then إذا زادت, and once it goes beyond 36, then you give bint labun until 45, and then once it goes beyond 45 up to 60, you give hiqqa. فإذا زادت ففيها جذعة, then جذعة. فإذا زادت فيها ابنة لبون, again all the way up to 120. Yeah. إلى 20 ومئة. فإذا زاد على 20 ومئة ففي كل 50 حقة وفي كل 40 بنت لبون. This part, this end part, this is what the Shafis act upon. Can anyone see that? That's what the Shafis take. And like we actually take from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud after 120. We take from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud there, and we say that is the one that seems to be more widespread. Yeah. And then you can read more of that hashi over there. And if you want to read more about the hadith regarding this, then Binaya and like I said, Umdatul Ri'aya and Nasb al-Raya, they've like and Fath al-Qadir, they've mentioned many hadith in support of this. Okay, so then he says ثم إذا زادت على 120, once it goes beyond 120 تستأنف الفريضة. So ista'nafa is from the word anf, nose. So the Arabs would call this like a new thing. So they would use the word nose for a new thing, something new. So they would say تستأنف الفريضة, the obligation is now restarted now. Once it hits 120, you start the calculation again, i.e. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 like that. فَيَكُونُ فِي الْخَمْسِ. So now after 120, in 5 there's going to be a shot. مَعَ الْحِقَّتَيْن, with the 2 hiqqas. وَفِي الْعَشْرِ, and then in 10, meaning when they say 5, they mean 120 plus 5. And when they say 10, they mean 120 plus 10. وَفِي خَمْسَ عَشَرَ ثَلَاثَ شِيَا, 120 plus 15. وفي العشرين 120 plus 20 أربع شيا. وفي 25, and when it hits 25 بنت مخاض إلى 150. Yeah, because once you hit 25, you're really 120 plus 25 equals 145. So you've only got 5 left now. 145, 146, 147, 148. That is bint labun. Once you hit 150, وفي 15, so he says, فَيَكُنْ فِيهَا ثَلَاثَ حِقَاق. There's 3 hiqaqs because now we're following 50. ثُمَّ تُسْتَأْنَفُ الْفَرِيضَةُ, and then the obligation is going to be restarted again. Yeah, so you're going to work every 50, it's going to be a separate window. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 36, up to 50. And then 5, 10, like that. وفي 25 بنت مخاض وفي 36 بنت لبون فإذا بلغت 100, once it reaches 100 and و96 and 196 ففيها 4 حقاق إلى 200. So 4 hiqaqs all the way up to, yeah. ثم تستأنف الفريضة, and the obligation is going to be restarted أبدا, forever, how much ever you have. كما تستأنف, just like it's restarted في الخمسين, just like after the 50 التي بعد 150. So just like between 150 to 200, you're going to restart every time you hit. وَهَذَا إِنْدَنَا, this is according to us. Yeah. So this is according to us. Where do you get this from? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So here at the bottom you can see this narration. Binaya brings this in, it's in Nasb al-Raya as well. Yeah. So this is like the Abdullah ibn Mas'ud narration you can check out. Yeah. So this is where we get that calculation from. Now clearly Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is not going to make this up himself. He's going to have got it from somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, now look, I know some of you guys are probably struggling with trying to understand this calculation. It's late at night time as well, and usually kind of zakat is a bit confusing. What I would suggest is watch my Kuduri video on zakat. I've done this whole calculation easy, like on the screen. You can follow it, very very easy to work out. Yeah, but the point is that these calculations were something which, like, the zakat collector would, off by heart, he could just say it. Like if you said to him, a guy's got 14,000 220 camels. How much zakat does he have to give? He straight away can work it out. Yeah, so he works out how many 50s there are. 14,220 camels. And then he'll work out. Then he knows at the end that 20 is equal to 4 goats. Yeah, that's 20 is 4 goats. So take that 20 away. 14,200. How many 50s are there in 14,200? There's I don't know how many are there. Yeah, loads. Yeah, and the calculator for that, but you guys probably know better than me. So what did the Shafi say? قال الشافعي رحمه الله إذا زادت على 120, once it goes beyond 120, واحدة, one, ففيها ثلاث بنت لبون, there will be 3 bint labuns. Because remember, they're working in 40s and 50s. Yeah. So how do the Shafis do it? So they say once you reach 120, 120 is really like the number, and then after that you're going to start working in 40s and 50s now. So he says after 120, 121, you've got to give 3 bint labuns. Why is that? Because each bint labun is like a 40. And how many 40s are there in 121? There's 3 40s. So therefore, there's 3 bint labuns. فَإِذَا صَارَتْ 100, so once it becomes 130, 130, فَفِيهَا حِقَّةٌ وَبِنْتَ لَبُونَ. Does anyone know how we work that out? How do the Shafis work out that once you hit 130, you give 2 bint labuns and 1 hiqqah? A hiqqah is worth 50, and bint labuns each are worth 40 each. Yeah? Do you understand? Confused. So which part are you confused on? Yeah. So the Shafis basically say, if you have 120, because that Prophet ﷺ's calculation was up to 122 hiqqas, we stick to that. But because the Bukhari hadith says that after 120 you work in 40s and 50s, yeah, meaning that now once you hit over 120, you don't follow the Bukhari hadith anymore about that calculation now. You forget hiqqas. So now, when you have 121, you're going to follow the 40 rule. So how many 40s are there in 121? There's 3 40s. Each 40 is a bint labun. So now you're going to have 3 bint labuns. 122, 3 bint labuns. 123, 4 bint labuns. Sorry, 3 bint labuns. 124, 3 bint labuns. 125, 3 bint labuns. 3, all the way up to 130. Once you hit 130, how many 40s go into 130? So they don't go fully, do they? So you got 3 40s go into it, clearly up to 120, but then you got 10 extra. But what you can do is you can have a 50 and you can have 2 30s. Yeah? How much is it? 2 50s. Yeah? How much is it? فإذا صارت 130 ففيها حقة. So 1 حقة and bint labun. So 2 40s and 1 50. Yeah, so 50 is 1 hiqqah, and then you've got 40 and 40. So 50 plus 40 plus 40 is 130. Have you got? Okay. Now let's say, for example, you've got 140. How much would they say? How much zakat would they say? So all you have to work out is how many full 40s go into it, or how many full 50s and 40s go into it. 140. Who can work this out? 140. So 2 hiqqas, so you got 2 50s going to it. So 140, 2 50s, 50, 50. And then you got 40 left, isn't it? Yeah, 1 bint labun. So 2 50s and 140. 50 plus 50 is 100, plus 40 equals 140. Okay, if you got 150, what do you give? How many 50s go into 150 fully? 3, yeah? 3 hiqqas, good. Okay, 160. Do 50s fully go into 160? No, they don't. Right? So now we have to shift around, play around with the figures. So How many 40s go into 160? Do 40s fully go into 160? 4 40s. So 4 bint labuns. Okay, 170. If you have 170, how many 50s are not going to fully go into 170, are they? They're not. So you're going to have a mix of 50s and 40s. So how many are you going to have? 170. 170. No? So 150, yeah? And then on top of that, you're going to have 3 40s. 150, 3 40s. Now, look, not everyone is going to be very quick at maths like this. Not everyone's going to be able to work it out like this. And what I would suggest is just play around yourself, play around with figures and these kind of things, and slowly you'll pick it up. But do you understand the concept of how this works? Any number you have, so if according to the Shafis, if the zakat collector goes to a person and this person has 927 camels, according to the Hanafis, how much zakat does he have to give? And according to the Shafis, how many zakat does he have to give? Yeah, work it out. According to Hanafis, how much do you have to give? And according to Shafis, how much do you have to give? When you have 927. Yeah, so what you want to do is, according to Shafis, you want to understand that 7's not worth anything. So you want to go down to the closest 10, which is 920. So how many 40s and how many 50s go into 910? That's what you want to work out. Yeah, 920. So, 50s into 900 and 850. So that's 8, 16, 17 50s. And then on top of that, you got 3, the 2. How much? 907 Hanafis. 18 hiqqah, according to Hanafis, good. Okay, so 18 hiqqahs. That's 900, isn't it? And then 27 on top. What's that going to be? 1 binti makhad. Good. And according to the Shafis, what is it going to be? Remember, Shafis are going to work in 40s and 30s. They just want to know how many fully 50s and 40s can go into 920. That's what they want to know. So I'm thinking 850 is going to be 16, 17. Yeah, 17 hiqqas. And then on top of that, you got 17. And that is not going to work. 70. It's going to have to be 16 hiqqas. 23 full. What? Okay. Is it 23 full? How is it 23 full? 920 is a full. Is a full 40s. Oh, 23. You're right. Yeah, 23 times. I'm thinking 50, and I'm thinking how is 23 50s coming there? Yeah, you're right. So that means that 23 40s going to 920. That means 23 binti labuns. Okay. Yeah. Alima, you and Khalid have understood this. The others don't really. Just keep going over it. I would say go through the Quduri videos, inshallah. So he says ثم يدار الحساب, and then the hisab, the calculation, is going to revolve around أربعينات 40s والخمسينات 50s. فتجب, and therefore will be necessary في كل 40, in every 40, 1 بنت لبون, وفي كل 50 حقة, 1 حقة. لما روي, because of what's been reported, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كتب, he wrote in his letter, which is reported in Bukhari, إذا زادت الإبل, once the camels are more than 120, ففي كل 50 حقة, then in every 50 there's going to be a حقة. ففي كل 50, that's the خبر مقدم. حقة is a مبتدا مؤخر. Yeah, so ففي كل 50 حقة واحدة. وفي كل 40 بنت لبون. So في كل 40 is خبر مقدم. بنت لبون is the مبتدا مؤخر. من غير شرط عود ما دونها. Yeah, so من غير شرط means without there being a condition of going back to what was below it. Yeah, what was mentioned. Hanafis go back to what was below, isn't it? So the Hanafis say after 120 you go back to the original calculation. So that's what it means. min غير, without going back to what was before bint labun, i.e. 5 is 1 goat, 10 is 2 goats, and so forth. ولنا, and our argument, أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم كتب في آخر ذلك, he wrote, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, at the end of, in the letter that Amr ibn Hazm has. So Amr ibn Hazm had a letter, and in that letter is actually written, so they must have seen that letter in them days. We don't have access to that letter, but they must have still had that artifact. It was still there. And they said, فَمَا كَانَ أَقَلَّ مِنْ ذَلِكَ, so anything that is less than that, فَفِي كُلِّ خَمْسِ ذَوْدْ شَاتٍ, meaning anything less than the 40s and the 50s is going to be a shat. Yeah? So in other words, 5, 1 shat, 10, 2 shats, and so forth. So that's basically the what we use over there. Now, he then says, finally, فَنَعْمَلْ بِزِيَادَةٍ, that's why we act upon the extra wording. So if you have 2 hadith, and one has an extra wording, and the person that has reported the extra wording is a reliable person, we say, it just makes sense that maybe the other group of people missed out this extra line. So we act upon the extra line out of cautiousness. Okay. وَالْبُخْتُ وَالْعِرَابُ سَوَاء. So then he says the bukht and the i'rab are sawa. So bukht is basically a camel which is a non-Arab camel, the two-hump camel. So if you've ever seen a two-hump camel, they call that a bukht. And they call it a bukht, they say, is because it's from Bukht Nasr, Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar was a ruler in the past, and he was, he banished the Bani Israel and slaughtered them, etc. Bukht, it was named Bukht Nasr, and they called the camels after him. That's for one opinion, Allah knows best. And the Arab are the one-hump camels. Yeah. So the Arabs, they recognized the camel that lived in the Arabian Peninsula was one camel. So that's why they called it Arab. Yeah, it was known as Arab. Now look, Arab is an animal, and Arab is a human. So if you're a human and you live in the Arabian Peninsula, you're an Arab. Arabi is one, and Arab is the jama of the single camel, which is an Arabi. So the Arabs call an Arab person Arabi, and they call a single camel an Arabi, but the ikhtilaf is in the jama. Yeah. So the jama of Arabi camel is an Arab, and the jama of a human is an Arab. Do you understand that? So the zakat of the bukht and the Arab are equal. Meaning, in the world today at the moment, we have lots of species, don't we? Like, zoology goes into a lot of species. Like some people say, the idea of evolution. Did evolution ever happen with animals? Like, obviously with Adam alayhi salam, the general position of the Muslims is that Adam alayhi salam was not from, a humanoid. He wasn't like, evolved from some other human creature. We believe that Allah created him. But animals, there's a possibility that one animal came from another animal. Yeah, this kind of like change is possible. So this is why, like, around the world, you have animals that look very similar. Yeah, so you have obviously camels, one-hump camels. You have two-hump camels. So maybe they came from the same origin, and this is why, like, nowadays, what if you find a llama? Because a llama has been classed as being a camel animal that's very similar to camels. And Arabs wouldn't have known about llamas in them days because they were in the, South America. And Arabs had never gone there. Just like, for example, like, kangaroos. Kangaroos in Australia. Arabs never went there. They never knew about these. So this is why he says that in them days, when they discovered about the bukht camel, they said, is the bukht camel a camel? Because we only recognize a camel with one hump. So they say, yeah, it's a bukht camel. It's the same sort of like, comes in the same umbrella of camel. So the same. So if you had bukht camels, 5 bukht camels, you'd have to give 1 goat and so forth. في وجوب الزكاة لأن مطلق الاسم, because the idea is the name camel. Yeah, even the word camel is from the word jamal. If you didn't know, camel is from the word gamal. Like North Africans, you say gamal, and then the English kind of just heard that word and they call it camel. So the word camel, the word ibil, is inclusive of all the 2 categories. That's what they're saying. Just like when we talk about, for example, like cows and buffalo. So buffalo is treated the same as a cow. Yeah. Even though Arabs didn't have like buffaloes. Buffaloes were found in the east. So again, this is like an interesting thing how fiqh slowly develops later on, where we don't have in the Quran or Hadith what do we call this particular animal, but the scholars try to like attribute it. This is why you have some strange things that the fuqaha mentioned. For example, an elephant. Imam Muhammad says elephants are haram to eat because they look like pigs. So he thought that an elephant looks like a pig. Now, the way we're brought up, we understand that an elephant is not a pig. It's actually totally different from a pig. But because they must have rarely seen these animals, because they didn't have zoos or anything like that, they would have associated these kind of animals with whatever they knew. The same goes for like fish as well. Like the concept of fish, their understanding of fish in them days was restricted. Yeah. Nowadays we have so many varieties around the world, and people have discovered new species and all those things. So again, this is like a whole discussion in itself. We don't have time. Maybe some other day I'll try to go a bit detail into how fuqaha deal with animals and things like prawns, crabs, these kind of like new kind of creatures that are not mentioned in the early books. Okay, so that's that. Now, I'm just going to kind of like mention to you some important points which are not in Hidayah. By the way, I don't know if next week I'm going to continue the lessons. So my holidays are over at the moment. Yeah, I'm going to have to start work again. So I don't know if I'll be able to continue the lessons from. So inshallah, I'll continue till the end of this week, till tomorrow hopefully, and then I'll tell you guys if I do try to continue lessons, because I'll be working in the evenings. Okay, so Imam. Okay, there is this issue where if you remember I told you, where I said, where do we get this idea that one goat is equal to 2.5% of 5 camels? So we said the majority of Hanafis, they say that this is Amr Ta'budi. We don't know where these numbers come from, and so we just stick to that. Okay? Now Imam Sarakhsi is a very interesting character in Hanafi fiqh history, because Imam Sarakhsi brings about lots of like very, very interesting ways of looking at things. Yeah? And studying like Sarakhsi is I would say, when you're studying Hidayah, you should always read on the side like several books. Ideally, if we had enough time, what I would do, if we were saying enough time, I would bring you Hidayah. Once we finish like a section on Hidayah, we look at what Kanz al-Daqaiq says. We look at what Sharh al-Wiqaya says. We look at what Ikhtiyar says, because a lot of his overlap. A lot of it is like 90% the same thing they're saying. Yeah, they're just like repeating it again. So if you do that, you've actually covered several texts in one go. Does that make sense? Like for instance, like if I show you, I'm just going to go a bit over time now. So if anyone has to leave, that's fine. You can follow the recording, inshallah. So if for example, if I show you from the Turath website, if I show you, for instance, Kanz al-Daqaiq on this particular masala. Show you Kanz al-Daqaiq. You can see how easy it is to understand them. Yeah, so for instance, Kanz al-Daqaiq, there it is. Okay, so Kanz al-Daqaiq, Kitab Zakat al-Ibil. Okay, so look at this. Babu Sadaqat al-Sawam. Now remember, Kanz al-Daqaiq is based upon Hidayah. Yeah, that's why when you study Hidayah, then you look at Kanz al-Daqaiq, it makes sense. Hiya allati is that which taktafi bil-ra'i, suffices with grazing fi akthar as-sana, for majority of the year. I told you 6 months. If it grazes self-grazing for more than 6 months, ويجب في 5 in 5 وعشرين في 25 إبلا بنت مخاض. So in 25 camels you have to give بنت مخاض. وفيما دونه, and anything less than it, meaning 25, في كل 5 شاة, in every 5 you give a goat. So he's kind of worded it a bit different. وفي 36 in 36 بنت لبون. وفي 46 حقة. وفي 61 in 61 جذعة. وفي 76 76 2 بنت لبونز. وفي 91 2 حقتان إلى 120 until 120. ثم في كل 5 شاة, then in every 5 there's a shot. وإلى 145 until you hit 145. ففيها حقتان, the two hiqqas, وبنت مخاذ, and a بنت مخاذ. وفي 150, and once you hit 150, ثلاث حقاق. ثم في كل 50, and then in every 5 there's a shat. وفي 150, and then in a 175 there's ثلاث حقاق وبنت مخاذ and a بنت مخاذ. وفي 186, and then in 186 ثلاث حقاق وبنت لبون, 3 حقاقs, 1 بنت لبون. وفي 106 in 196 أربع حقاق, 4 حقاقs until 200. ثم تستأنف الفريضة, then the obligation is changed again, starts again, أبدا, forever, كما بعد, just like after 150. والبخت كالإعراب, what we just said, البخت كالإعراب, he says. So this text is very, very condensed, right? And that's it. See that? You've covered 2 texts now. Now if we looked at another text, you'd have covered another text. And that way you can cover like lots of texts simply by just doing one text. Yeah, and that's like a quick route to covering all these, I would say. Anyway, the last thing I want to explain to you guys is, so Imam Sarakhsi, he actually has a different argument. And Imam Sarakhsi basically says that when you have, he says, when you have, where do you get this? There has to be some logic behind why the Prophet ﷺ chose a goat for 5. Yeah, and I'm just going to read it from Bahr al-Ra'iq. This Ibn Nujaym Bahr al-Ra'iq. He disagrees with Sarakhsi. Okay, he disagrees with him, but he still brings the text, and this is in Sarakhsi as well. You can read it there, and then we finish today, inshallah. So he says, واقتصر الفقهاء اسنان 4 لأن عاداها السديس والبازل تيسير على أرباب خلاف الأضحية وقال هذه الأسنان 4 نهاية والدر الأسن وما زاد عليه فهو رجوع. Oh yeah, so he says والأصل في هذا الباب, the principle in this chapter is based upon أمر توقيفي وما في المبسوط, yeah, and that which is mentioned in مبسوط, yeah, مما يفيد أنه معقول المعنى. So Imam Sarakhsi's مبسوط, where it seems as though he's indicating that no, it's not Amr Tawqif, it's not Amr Ta'abudi. There's actually a reason behind why we give this. So he says, إن إيجاب الشاة, the reason you give a goat في 5 من الإبل لأن المأمور به ربع الأشر, because what we're commanded to give is 2.5%. ربع الأشر means a quarter of a tenth. The Prophet ﷺ said, هاتوا ربع أشر أموالكم, bring 2.5% of your wealth. وَالشَّاةُ, and a goat, تقرب, is actually very close to ربع أشر, to 2.5%. How is that? فإن الشاة, because a goat كانت تقوم, in them days, would be valued at 5 dirhams. وابنة مخاذ, and in them days a bint مخاذ would be valued at 40 dirhams. فإيجاب الشاة, so in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the obligation of a goat is actually في الخمس كإيجابها في المئتين. So you see how he works it out? He's saying that the goat is like 5 out of 40, and 5 out of 40 is 2.5%. Yeah, 5 out of 40. Yeah, so in other words, sorry, one out of. Yeah, so he says, yeah, so he's saying that the goat is worth 1 dirham, that's worth 40, so that's like. Yeah, so again, the reason I'm saying this is interesting is because certain things in the Hanafi school, there isn't an agreement on it being Amr Ta'abudi. Like Imam Bazdawi, in one place, he even says there's even a rational reason for why Allah tells us to wash our faces, our arms, and our feet, and wipe our head. He believes that there's a rational reason. The rational reason he says is because technically, if you go to the toilet and you break your wudu, you should wash your entire body. That's what you should wash, because your whole body is affected. But if you had to wash your body every time you went toilet, it's haraj. So that's why the Sharia has shifted away from washing your entire body to just washing those parts of your limbs which are normally exposed from your clothes. So in the Arabs' days, what was normally exposed? Your face, your arms up to your elbows, and your feet. Yeah, so it's easy to access them, basically. It's easy to access. That's his argument anyway, but other Hanafis, they disagree on this. Yeah. Okay, you can read more about this on the rebuttal that Bahr al-Ra'iq, Ibn Nujaym does against him as well in Bahr al-Ra'iq. Yeah, but that's his argument, that is. Okay, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments. So today's lesson, what do we cover? So we covered the concept of camel zakat. We talked about what ibil comes from. We talked about this idea of different ages of camels and which chapters in fiqh are usually associated to camels. And why is it that in udhiyah we actually only allowed to slaughter a camel that is 5 years or above? And in this chapter of zakat, that's not the case. Yeah, we actually take younger camels as zakat. Yeah, because like we said, it's to do with productivity. And then we talked about the whole calculation. Up to 120, everyone agrees 2 hiqas. After 120, Shafi say 40, 50 it shifts, and the Hanafi say no. They say the Abdullah ibn Mas'ud version tells us that we restart this again. Yeah, we restart this again. And that's it. And then we just said at the end, we said, this whole bukht and the i'rab is the concept that we said that the ulama, fuqaha were trying to figure out. Can we classify several species as under one species or not? Like nowadays, what do you classify a platypus as? What is a platypus? What is a kangaroo? Yeah, what does it fall under? What does a llama fall under? If you can do at least one lesson a week, I've really enjoyed it. Alhamdulillah, hamzakallah khair. Yeah, I know, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and teach students. So yeah, I mean, I generally enjoy teaching this because I usually do like about 3 or 4 hours of mutala a day for this. Because I benefit a lot. So I can do a lot of reading to prepare this. Can do once a week. Yeah, I'll see inshallah. I'll see inshallah. Okay guys, so jazakallah khair. Hopefully see you tomorrow inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.